Let me show you how to code in C in 2 minutes. First, you need a compiler, usually GCC on Linux and MSVC on Windows. Next, you have to write this boilerplate here for a working program that does nothing. To print your first line of text, use printf like this and make sure not to forget the semicolon at the end or C will hate you. This \n here marks a new line. To make a variable, specify its type, name, and optionally its initial value, which isn't technically optional because you get garbage when you don't do it. The main data types you need to know in C are int for integers, float for floating point numbers, and char for ASCII characters. You can cast between different types like this, and actually it turns out the float sucks, so use double instead for better floating point precision. To read an integer from the standard input, use scanf like this. There are many operators in C, including basic arithmetic, comparison, bitwise, logic, and everything in between. There's also conditional if-else statements, as well as a while loop and a for loop. I'll skip the self-explanatory ones, but for repeats the code in loop body this many times for this value, and you can also make it go backwards like this. These are just increment and decrement operators, adding to and subtracting one from the value, respectively. Break lets you exit a loop early, while continue lets you skip the rest of the loop body and return to the beginning for the next iteration. There's also a do while loop, but you don't need that one for now. You also have a switch statement, which is hella fast, so just keep that in mind. You can declare and define a function of your own by specifying the type of its return value, the name, and the arguments. Also, if you're coming from another language and you think this is the way to make the function take in no arguments, I'm sorry, but you're wrong because that is Richie decided this is the correct way. Return does, well, exactly that. There's also labels and go-tos, but they're taboo. Pointers are just addresses of other variables. To get the address of a variable, use an ampersand, and to get the value at an address, use an asterisk, and you can also modify the value using a pointer. If you don't understand, don't worry, nobody does in the beginning. Just check out my video explaining pointers. To make an array, use square brackets and the same to access its elements. C is also smart enough to count the elements manually like this, but has no strings, so you have to use arrays of chars. C doesn't have classes, but you can use structs to combine together multiple values into blocks of memory. You also have enums, which are pretty useful, and you have unions, which use one memory address to store multiple possible data types, but can only store one type at a time. Now for some serious talk. C trusts you with its life and doesn't gatekeep anything from you, so try not to betray that trust. And finally, here are some useful headers to make your life easier because the C standard library is cracked. That was C in just over 2 minutes. Hope you learned something new. Subscribe for more educational content like this.